there. But yeah, let's do 245, and then we'll do 3 to 4. Cool. So you and I can start off at 245 chat, and then cool. Okay, sweet.
So we're already on live.
Yeah, it says we're live now. But yeah, let's do 245, and then we'll do 3 to 4. Okay. Cool. So you and I can start off at 2. All right, we are live. What's up, everybody? Let me put the link in here to the live stream so folks can get it on Facebook. And then Naheed, if you don't mind sharing that on Facebook.
Absolutely. And today we have an interesting topic that everybody comes to coaches about, but limiting beliefs. But before we do that, it'd be interesting to know if anybody who listened to us last time, whether they have any thoughts or insights after our conversation.
Yeah. So I know we had one or two visitors last time who were watching along with us, but
we had some good questions.
Yeah, some great questions actually. So if you guys do end up signing in again, feel free to post in the chat when you sign in any questions you might have about this. But today we're going to talk about no one's watching yet, so we'll just jump right into the limiting beliefs exercise. So let's talk a little bit first about what limiting beliefs actually are. Naheed, do you want to jump into that and quick definition, and we can talk through that for a second?
Yeah, just one thing before we get into that, just to introduce ourselves a little bit. You know, my name is Naheed Overfeld. I'm a mindset coach and a success strategist. And what that really means is very pertinent to today's subject on limiting beliefs. It's what are those things that keep us from accomplishing our big goals? And I tend to focus on professional goals. How do I get to that next level career, for example? Or how do I grow my business? What's standing in the way? And I find that I'm really good at helping people answer this question, which is, I don't understand why, fill in the blank. Why I feel stuck, why I'm not able to move forward, why I cannot achieve this big goal, right? So that's really the area of the expertise area that I have. To answer the question, what's a limiting belief? Everybody has experienced it. It's when you think about something and that almost instantaneous thought that says, oh no, I kind of doubt myself. I don't know that I'm truly experienced enough, or I don't know that if I am good enough, smart enough. Like we all have those thoughts where something inside of us wants to move forward. And there's this little small voice in our head that says, not so sure about that.
Exactly. 1 second. I'm actually tagging you in this post so you can reshare it on your side. There you go. Cool. But yeah, so I'm Dhru Bee. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a business executive and leadership coach. I do a lot of mindset work like Naheed, but our approaches are very different, but we can tackle some of the same issues, like limiting beliefs, for example. And exactly like what Naheed said, it's those things those beliefs about yourself that are often not true, but they are the ones that hold you back, the ones that discourage you from doing things, from trying new things, from going to take on new responsibilities, new positions. Really, the things that keep you in your comfort zone and keep you afraid to extend your comfort zone beyond what it is right now. There's always that saying that the growth is at the edge of your comfort zone, right? So what are the things that keep you solidly in your comfort zone? As you go to do something, what's the things like, oh, wait, be careful, don't do that. You know, that gives you like imposter syndrome if you're taking on a new role or starting a new business or moving up in a company or anything really, any new experience or relatively new experience. What holds you back? Those are what limiting beliefs actually are. And I know that the name, it's kind of in the name, self-explanatory, but sometimes we have these like almost clinical names for these things, and
Right.
It takes the humanity out of it. And so when you hear it and have it the rubber meet the road about it, then it's much more clear what these things are and how they affect you, how they hold you back and what you're doing in your life. So today we're going to talk about limiting beliefs a little bit, and he's going to do a little exercise for us to kind of help you guys understand and identify your limiting beliefs for yourself. And then we're going to take some questions as many people join. But if not, we'll just go ahead and talk about the next time and what we can do over the course of time. So, Naheed, do you want to jump into that?
Yeah, actually, Dhru, I think it's important at this point to point out when we think about limiting beliefs, we have all these negative connotations regarding that. But I know this is a conversation that you and I have had because I've actually had a session with Dhru as well. The purpose for our beliefs, whether we consider them limiting or not, is to protect ourselves. Mm-hmm. There's something in our subconscious that doesn't feel comfortable, doesn't feel safe, doesn't feel validated in some important way. And the purpose is just to protect us. So it's not there to try to stop us. It's not there to purposefully sabotage us. It's there to help us feel safe. And so just having that awareness hopefully makes us feel a little less frustrated, right? Because there's a purpose behind it. It may not be helping you today, but at the time we developed those beliefs, it was there for a purpose and it helped you, right? So
Exactly.
maybe we can have a little bit of compassion for ourselves when we find these beliefs cropping up from time to time, because it's not because there's something wrong with us.
Right. And the term self-sabotage gets thrown around a lot too.
Mhm.
And that has a very almost like a malicious sound to it. You know, you
Right.
self-sabotage yourself, but it's not about really sabotaging yourself. Sabotaging is the intent to create something that fails, right? Sabotage, this is like you said, it's protecting yourself. And it's important to delve back and figure out where these things generated from, where the genesis of this was, to fully understand why this happened, right? Why did this belief or this part of you feel like it has to take on this belief to hold you back? Because the holding you back is not the intention, it's the ultimate outcome. The intention, like you said, is protection, right? It thinks this part of you, and it's something I talk about a lot with, is a shadow idea. The shadow part of you it's not a malicious or negative or poor or even just a bad part of you. It's just an almost immature part of you. It's a part of you that holds you back, not with the intention of holding you back, but with the intention of protecting you. It just doesn't know how to do that properly. So the only way it knows how to protect you, it's like your mom, right? It's like your mom when you're like 4 years old and you're trying to go explore the world and, go in the jungle gym. She's like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't go outside. Don't do that, because you might get hurt. Yes, you might get hurt. The might is the key, right? There's a risk. And this part of you is like the risk averse to the extreme part of you, where it's like, don't take that risk. There's a risk you may get hurt. And and most people around that risk is almost worth it most of the times, right? It's a worthwhile. There are worthwhile risks and there's not worthwhile risks, right? There's like, jumping off a building with no parachute, probably not a worthwhile risk, but depending on your level of tolerance for excitement, bungee jumping may be something you want to try, right?
Mhm.
And so it depends on the person, but generally it's the shadow part of you, the limiting belief part of you, the self-sabotaging part of you is not trying to sabotage you. It's trying to protect you. It just has no idea how to do that.
Yeah, I love your mom analogy because I think it's perfect. I have a slightly different way of saying perhaps the same thing. When we have a specific situation and experience in our life, that piece of you gets stuck in time, and that piece only remembers the trauma. It does not have any knowledge of the growth as a result of that experience. It doesn't even know that you're not the same person to be able who would experience the same situation. So it's just stuck in this trauma. And until we understand that and recognize it and uncover it, then we let that little piece, which could be 5 years old, 10 years old, we are letting this little young part of us run the show, right? It's not the adult self with the knowledge and the intellect and the logic that's running the show when we get triggered. It's this little piece that had this experience, is stuck in the trauma, thinking that it's their responsibility to keep us safe, which is why anytime something comes even close to a similar situation, your subconscious is going to get triggered, and then you're going to react from that place of that shadow self. I like that word, the shadow self. It's not a bad part, it's just there to protect you.
Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
so we've talked a lot about it. We explained a little bit, so I think maybe now's a good time to just jump right in.
Go for it.
Okay, so I'm going to ask everybody first and foremost to close your eyes, and we're going to start with a few deep breaths. Okay, so close your eyes and start breathing through your nose. So in through your nose, and then out through your mouth. We're going to do that one more time. In through your nose, and then out through your mouth. And on the last breath, I'm going to ask you to hold it. So go into your nose, hold, and then out through your mouth. With your eyes still closed, what I'd like you to do is think about one particular situation right now that is causing you stress in your life. Just keep your eyes closed and focus on where in your life are you experiencing stress or tension. And as you think about that situation, what are the top 2 or maybe 3 emotions that come up that feel a little uncomfortable and negative? Just take a moment and think about these top 2 or 3 emotions that you're feeling right now. And what I'd like you to say to you is just allow your imagination to run freely at this point. So whatever shows up, don't judge it, don't criticize yourself for it. Just be the impartial observer. You're the fly on that wall. So feel those experiences, these emotions. And as you're getting into that emotion, see if you feel it in any part of your body. Is there any tension or tightness anywhere in your body? And tune into that area. Bring your focus, bring your attention in here. And we're peeling back the layers of the onion over here, okay? I'm going to ask you to go one step deeper. And again, this might feel like imagination, but just go with whatever comes up with for you. And that is in that area of tension and tightness, what belief do you think is hidden in there? It usually means something along the lines of, this means that I am blank. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. Just take a moment and see what kind of bubbles up to the surface of your consciousness. And if you have something to write that down with, I recommend that you write it down. And then the last thing, as you're thinking about these emotions and beliefs, just allow whatever comes up, and maybe nothing is coming up for you now, but it will start showing up when you feel more relaxed and you're in a place of allowing these thoughts to come to your surface. So as you're thinking about this, I want you to think about what are the other areas in your life that you may have felt the same emotions and or the same beliefs. Because you're going to realize very quickly as you delve into your subconscious that these patterns, if they're emotional patterns, they carry with you. They're that baggage that you've strapped onto your back, and it's with you, whether it's personal relationships, professional situations, and even health is impacted by our emotions. So take a moment and just jot down, what are some of the areas in your life that you are being impacted by these emotions? And if a belief comes up, then the belief as well. And then just take a few deep clarifying breaths so that it brings you back into the present mode. And the purpose for this is just to be the observer, just to uncover what's showing up for you today. Again, not to judge it, certainly not to judge yourself, but to recognize what's in that subconscious that's reacting in a particular way. So yeah, that feels like hopefully somebody got some value out of that.
And if you feel comfortable sharing, you can put that in the chat. And so we can help kind of walk you through, talk you through a little bit if you want to. You don't have to, obviously, but if you feel comfortable sharing, feel free to share in the chat what your thoughts, what came up for you, what your process is right now as you're going through the thought process you have right now, and where you're feeling it in your body or where you felt it in your body. Part of this is, I mean, the big part of coaching in general is creating awareness around these things, right? And once you create the awareness, we always say the work is done in between sessions, right? You may find an immediate value, but the other thing is in between sessions, you may realize suddenly you're taking a shower randomly 4 days after the session, and then you're like, oh my God, I realize X, or I really feel a certain way about this, or I feel suddenly like a weight's lifted suddenly out of nowhere. Because your subconscious, once you become aware of it, your subconscious starts working on it naturally over time. And more often than not, I find myself talking to clients 2-3 sessions in, and they're like, oh my God, that thing we talked about in session 1, remember that we talked about this thing and I couldn't get my head around it. And suddenly I feel amazing about this. And then I had this huge realization on Saturday and blah, blah, blah. And it's just this awesome, awesome feeling where you got someone to a breakthrough that they had never thought they could get to, or they didn't even realize they needed before they started coaching.
This kind of reminds me of my own situation, because like I said, we teach first and foremost what we need to learn the most, but also everybody has a limiting belief. And how I got into coaching was because there were so many limiting beliefs that I didn't even know were not true, right? That's the insidious part of these beliefs, because it feels like it's true. It feels like this is me. For a very long period of time, I felt like I just wasn't smart enough. I just wasn't good enough. That's why I left the corporate world feeling like I am a fraud. What am I doing over here? And I had to stop and start observing and recognizing and working through a tremendous number of these things. But very quickly, once you start working with one or two, and you start asking yourself this question that, is it really true? You start to realize, no, this was a message that I picked up. Either somebody gave it to me or I picked it up on my own and I made it true, right? Because our experiences, our experiences are based on what our thinking is anyway. We create our own experiences.
Yeah, it's all about the story you create around these things, right? These beliefs are stories that you've formulated that, if you think about it, there are things in terms of rationalizations, right? Like backwards rationalizing things to make things okay. This is, again, the part of your shadow self, backwards rationalizing things to keep you safe. Not to make it okay, but to keep you safe, to prevent whatever the perceived trauma. And I say perceived because it's not always traumatic. It's just we make it seem that way. We give these things the power that they have over us, these beliefs, these events, or whatever. We create this fantastical story around these things that magnify them to the point where we can't see beyond them. And so they become our truth. They're not the truth, they are our truth, right?
Yes.
And what other people see, that's why that's the power of these, like these 360 assessments sometimes, is like we have these limiting beliefs, or these beliefs we have about ourselves. And then you do a 360 assessment with someone and they have these low beliefs about themselves, or high beliefs, either one, right? And suddenly they realize, oh wait, their team and their boss sees them completely differently than they thought that they were putting them forward. I did one with someone, and she thought she was a real hard ass, right? She was like, oh, I'm a mean person, and my staff, I rule with an iron fist, and my staff, they do what I say because they're out of fear. It's like Michael Scott. I want them to love how much they fear me, or fear how much they love me, whichever one. I think it was fear how much they love me, but she want them to love how much they feared her, right? And then when she got a 360 back, she's like, wait, what is this? Like, they were talking about how kind she is and how nice and how like huggable almost she is. Like, she's their boss. It's not huggable, but like very, very sweet, very gentle, and just very nurturing. And she's like, I'm not nurturing. I'm a badass. And it's like, well, clearly you're not. In your head, you think you're a certain way, right? But in reality, it's like, no, you're actually it's not a bad thing, right? And that's the other thing about this too. There's no good and bad about this.
Right.
It's just your perception of the world and of yourself is heavily influenced by your own stories, right? And their perception as well is also colored by their own stories too. But how you show up to them is not necessarily how you think you show up to them.
Absolutely. In fact, that's the number one reason that people go to a coach, is because when they realize their beliefs are no longer serving them, and they are very motivated to move beyond those beliefs. I'm not even going to call them limiting anymore, but these beliefs that are no longer serving them, that's when they're ready to move forward, because we are so invested in our stories. A very powerful question I ask my clients is, what's the benefit of staying stuck? And every single one of them will say, no benefit. Clearly there's no benefit. And it's like, well, if that was the case, you wouldn't be in it.
Right.
You would have moved right on by. So go back and think about, what's the benefit of holding on to this story? And again, it's not to come from the point of view that I am wrong or that I am being silly or stupid in some way. Each and every one of us do it. I have my own coach that I am working on with all of these limiting beliefs as well. We had a very similar conversation about some new venture. New ventures bring that out in us, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I have the same conversation with all my business clients whenever they got to raise their prices, right?
Yes.
Because it's a huge, huge deal, and it's coming to terms with that. But I think I love what you said about the question you ask about how is it serving you, right?
Mhm.
Because it is serving them, whether they want
Mhm.
to admit it. They don't. People don't want to admit that their limiting beliefs or their beliefs that are not accurate are serving them, but they are, right?
Mhm.
It may not be. It's like saying, oh, I don't have a choice. You always have a choice. The alternative may not be a desirable outcome,
Right.
right? But it's still a choice. And so when people are saying stuff like, "Oh, it's not serving me," they a lot of times they can see that it's serving them in certain ways, but they don't want to admit that that's a valid thing. But
Right.
your subconscious is thinks that that's valid, and that's all that matters. And
Right.
so your shadow part of you thinks that's a benefit that outweighs the risk. And if and maybe it does, right? That's also possible as well. There is the possibility that the risk is not worth,
Mhm.
the
It might be a very genuine protection that say, hey,
correct.
danger, don't go down that road or don't follow this path because something feels off. So you're right. You have to have some discernment in that.
Right. There's genuine like reasons not to do certain things. For
Mhm.
example, you don't want to walk on broken glass with bare feet. That
Mhm.
is a legitimate part of protection.
Right.
But you take that simple example and you extrapolate it to real life where you have these situations that are much more complex and a lot less straightforward than glass and bare feet. And it's like starting a new venture, for example, or bringing on a partner for your business, right? I
Mhm.
mean, people who've been burned in the past, or a relationship for that matter, a romantic,
Mhm.
romantic
Mhm.
relationship, people have been
Mhm.
burned in the past by a partner, romantic or otherwise, may not want to associate with someone else or bring someone else into the business because of fear of that happening again.
Yes. One thing I realized, Drew, that we didn't mention, the purpose of doing this exercise, first and foremost, is to help people recognize where their stress is right now and how it ties back to these various experiences and belief systems, right? So you have this current trigger, whatever the situation is, and it's a real situation. I'm not saying that it's not real, and you have real emotions related to it, but then you have this belief. And if you noticed, if you were able to get down to that last question, that belief, it's up here, and then there are all these little trees where it impacts you personally, professionally, health wise, like we said, in many, many different scenarios. So that's step one, was for you to get that level of awareness. But we're actually going to do a step two next time we meet in 2 weeks, right? Because we're going to actually, each of us are going to take some time and coach people through that. So, which is why we really encourage you to write it down and bring it with you next time so that we can help you move forward as people come up with their own issues that they have that they got from this scenario.
Yeah, and we'll be taking some volunteers if folks want to reach out and say that they'd be willing to come on and do this. I mean, you don't have to necessarily show your face and that kind of stuff. We can just kind of do it through chat, or ideally, if you could do it at least through voice, that'd be great. But feel free to reach out to us if you do want to do that. If you want to be willing to come on the show. Uh, but I think it would be cool to. But we're definitely going to work through it in terms of ways you can rationalize and figure out around and through, actually not around, sorry, through these beliefs, because it's that question, what's on the other side of fear, right? And these things are that fear that's holding you back from whatever it is you're going to get to. And what's on the other side of that is probably your goal, or at least something close to it, or something past it, frankly. So I want to go back to one thing though. I mentioned earlier perceived trauma, and I want to clarify that because all trauma is perceived trauma, right? I don't want to ever pretend like I'm minimizing trauma, because there is significant trauma is only as real as we make it real, and there's real trauma that people go through, and it's, well, whether it's real or not is relative to that person.
Right.
If you've experienced PTSD situations, for example, if you've been in a war, or if you've been through a violent situation, that is absolutely, it's still perceived
Real.
trauma, but it's real trauma,
It's
right?
real,
And
right?
whether
But
it's
it feels
real,
perceived.
right, and whether it's perception is reality. I want to just make that clear. And so what's perceived trauma is real trauma. It's just you're interpreting that event as a traumatic event, so it's still real.
Absolutely. In fact, in biology, there are two parallel paths. One is sensation, and that is, when you touch a hot stove, you instantaneously take your hand off the stove, and then it takes a millisecond for you to perceive. the pain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they both happened, they were both real, but one takes interpretation, our own personal interpretation, in order to be able to, in order to process it. Because multiple people, and we can see this right now with the elections, right? The political situation is what it is, and everybody is perceiving it in different ways. Same situation, but how you come out of it is very, very different. Same thing as you were talking about with vets. A lot of them have come out with significant trauma, and then some of them have not, at least on the surface of it, because they went into it perhaps with a different mindset, or their experiences were different. Something would allow them to come out of it from a different place. Not good, not bad, but just is that's how we are individual in that way.
Yeah, and it's processing it differently, right?
Yeah.
And people's pain thresholds are different, the same way that their temperature thresholds are different, the
Right.
same way that their trauma perceptions are different. And so I want to be sensitive to that and understand that I wasn't minimizing anything when I said perceived
Right.
trauma. What I want to say is perception is reality, and that's why the shadow exists in general. That's why this stuff is relevant, because it's a perceived truth that we've created for ourselves, these limiting beliefs. And so it is the truth as far as we're concerned until it's not.
Right. Until we decide otherwise.
Right.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
cool. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed this session. It was a quick one today, but I think we wanted to kind of get this out there and have it as experience. And again, we'll meet again in 2 weeks. It'll be 2 weeks at 3 p.m. Same bat time, same bat channel, and we will be promoting a little more next time. But we got some great viewers. We got actually up to 4 viewers today. Right now we have
Any
2, but
questions?
no questions today.
No questions. All right.
Any
So,
questions from the one person who's viewing right now?
so November 5th, that's going to be our next meeting at 3 p.m. Eastern. And we both will do a lot better announcing. We're not pop-ups. We're going to be less pop-up and more strategic and announced.
Yes, absolutely. We'll be promoting it a lot more, and please feel free, if you enjoy the session, please do spread the word. We're going to be doing Chai with Coaches every other week. So, and if it gets big enough, we'll do it every week. But we're starting for now every other week, and then we'll go from there. So, thank you guys so much for joining us today, and for those of you watching at home after the fact, thanks for joining, checking
Yeah.
out. So, yeah, take care, guys.
Thank you.